not symbolic only. We will engage with major and middle powers, but our decisions will be guided by national interest, sovereign equality, and mutual respect. The Bay of Bengal region is becoming a strategic fulcrum, and Bangladesh intends to be a confident actor, not a passive corridor only. Second, on the fragmentation of stability. From Ukraine to Gaza, from Sudan to Myanmar, the global system of crisis management has been tested and often found wanting. My country knows the cost of fragility. We have opened the doors to hundreds of thousands of forcibly displaced Rohingyas from Myanmar. We have contributed to UN peace missions, and we know how quickly humanitarian crisis can escalate. Stability is not only a regional concern, it's a global imperative. We must build efficacious multilateral and regional institutions that deliver, not just talk, and an agenda that translates into action. Third, on the weaponization of knowledge. In this age, information is no longer a byproduct of power, it's a tool of power. AI, deepfakes, orchestrated misinformation and disinformation, surveillance, all are reshaping diplomacy, democracy, and governance. Bangladesh stands ready to engage with these themes, to protect our information space, and to promote regulatory frameworks that safeguard both security and rights. Fourth, on economic realignment. Supply chains are fragmented, sanction regimes are multiplied, and de-risking has become a key word for the future of trade. For Bangladesh, this means we must diversify, deepen regional cooperation, and strengthen regional connectivity. We also must ensure that economic partnerships are not predatory, but rooted in mutual opportunity and resilience. We must harness the boundless potential of the Bay of Bengal and turn it into a corridor of growth and prosperity. Fifth, climate, borders, and security in our region. As a low-lying country facing the rising seas, saline intrusion, and migration pressures, Bangladesh is exposed to the risk of global warming, rising sea levels, increased salinity, and internal displacement of population. In this sea and all around it, we must construct cooperative frameworks, share technology and resources, and link our security to our environment. Let this region not just react to climate shocks, but become a leader in climate resilience diplomacy. Ladies and gentlemen, in moments of realignment, states are tempted to pick sides, but we should first pick the right course. Bangladesh chooses to be an active, sovereign, and responsible player. We will engage robustly, speak firmly when needed, and partner productively, always with an eye on national interest and regional stability. I thank the Center for Governance Studies for organizing this important forum, and I extend thanks to all participants for your commitment to dialogue. I look forward to the conversations, insights, and agreements that will emerge from these days. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Next will be our inaugural speaker, who is a distinguished jurist and one of the most respected voices in Bangladesh legal fraternity. The Honorable Chief Justice Syed Rifat Ahmed has been a guardian of constitutional values, rule of law, and judicial integrity. His work and thought leadership resonate far beyond the courtroom, deeply influencing governance, justice, and democratic resilience. We are privileged to welcome him today. Honorable Chief Justice, the floor is yours.
Honorable President of the Center for Governance Studies, distinguished Advisor for Foreign Affairs, distinguished guests of the Bay of Bengal conversation, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. We gather today at a moment when the global order is being reshaped with a velocity and unpredictability rarely witnessed in recent decades. Across continents, traditional alliances are shifting, geopolitical geometries are being recalculated, and spheres of influence are redrawn with pragmatic, interest-driven decision. Crises multiply, each overlapping, each eroding our established mechanisms of global crisis management. Knowledge itself has become weaponized in an age where deep fakes distort truth and AI-generated disinformation corrodes democratic deliberation. Economies scramble to strike a balance between internal reform, greater integration in regional common markets, and pragmatic responses to sanctions and debt stress. And here, in the Bay of Bengal, the rising seas and intensifying climate insecurity threaten to redraw borders, reorder security doctrines, and displace millions. These agendas of the Bay of Bengal Conversation 2025 frame not only the global condition, but the environment within which constitutional institutions must now operate. Within this theater of global instability, our own civic awakening of July 2024 stands out as a moment of rare clarity. It compelled Bangladesh to revisit the very grammar of its constitutional life. It reminded every organ of the state that the rule of law is not a bureaucratic ritual, nor an inherited ornamentation. Rather, it is the moral architecture that secures legitimacy in a world where legitimacy itself is fraying. Our Constitution, strikingly, does not define the rule of law. Rather, it gestures toward it through rights, through restraints, through the dignity it accords the governed. This is not a deficit. It is a deliberate reminder that the rule of law is a moral reading of the constitutional order, rooted in fairness, reason, and the consent of the people. Ladies and gentlemen, the July Revolution did not propose to overturn the Constitution. Rather, it proposed to purify our engagement with it. Transparency, accountability, and responsiveness. These three virtues became the leitmotif of the public conscience. Yet the judiciary, as the only fully functional constitutional organ during those uncertain months, was compelled to adopt a posture at once humble and resolute. Humble in acknowledging that it cannot exceed the boundaries of the text that gives it life, and resolute in ensuring that within those boundaries, no right is rendered illusory, no institution made captive, and no citizen abandoned. It is from that vantage point that the September 2024 Judicial Reform Roadmap emerged. An attempt to give structure to a national longing for constitutional normalcy. Over the past months, as we carried this roadmap across the country in a series of unprecedented judicial roadshows, we witnessed something profoundly moving. And that is a judiciary eager to reclaim guardianship over its institutional destiny, and a legal community rediscovering its civic vocation. It is in this spirit that our court has, over the past many months, overturned constitutional misadventures of the past, whether in the attempted burial of the Supreme Judicial Council, the distortions of the 15th Amendment case, or the unresolved echoes of the 13th Amendment review. For the first time in our institutional history, we operationalized a judicial appointment collegium, thereby giving organic life to a long-neglected vision of transparent, reasoned, and consultative judicial appointments process. Ladies and gentlemen, no modern reform of the judiciary in Bangladesh can claim coherence without reference to the landmark Mazda Hussain case. That watershed judgment carved out the constitutional autonomy of the judiciary and laid the groundwork for a professional leviathan capable of serving as one of the three pillars of the state. Over the past year, we have sought to activate this jurisprudence in earnest, introducing structural reforms in the service, regularizing career pathways, and laying the foundations for the Supreme Court Secretariat Ordinance. These measures are not mere bureaucratic reconfigurations. They are constitutional correctives intended to restore balance, independence, and administrative discipline. But reform, however noble its design, cannot survive on architecture alone. It survives on ownership. Ownership by those who must live under its canopy and breathe within its corridors. For months, our labor has been directed at cultivating a constituency of judges, lawyers, and court personnel who participate in reform and identify themselves as custodians of it. In roadshows, seminars, in consultations, in divisional dialogues, we have observed the emergence of a fraternity willing to take charge of its institutional destiny. Distinguished participants, permit me to speak candidly. The continuity of reform is not always guaranteed. Future Supreme Court administrations will inherit not only structures but landscapes. Landscapes that may bear little resemblance to the present transitional moment. Political and constitutional renegotiations may well produce a new social contract, perhaps even a new constitutional order. In such a moment, the judiciary will face its greatest test. That is, how to navigate this larger restructuring without losing the animated spirit of constitutionalism. Vision, wisdom, and courage. These three qualities will determine whether the judiciary remains relevant in a rapidly reconstituting nation. The truth is that the present Constitution, despite its many historical scars, remains the judiciary's only touchstone of legitimacy today. The basic structure doctrine, immutable in essence, but contested in politics, has served over the past year as the compass guiding our course corrections. Whether addressing excesses committed by the executive, legislative distortions force-fed upon the people, or judicial excursions beyond permissible limits, the court has been compelled repeatedly to reassert those entrenched norms that make constitutional life possible. That is, the separation of powers, judicial independence, democratic governance, inalienable fundamental rights, and above all, the sovereignty of the people. Each court constitutional ruling of the past year must therefore be understood as a seed sown in the fertile soil of institutional reform, with the hope that it will engender a sturdier constitutional culture. And yet, here lies the irony. While the court reaffirms the existing constitution as the sheet anchor of transitional justice, the people, endowed with the supreme constituent power, may in time choose to reshape that very constitution. In that scenario, the judiciary must accept this paradox, not as a threat, but as a profound democratic truth. Ladies and gentlemen, if the rule of law has been our internal compass in the transitional moment, judicial diplomacy has become the outward-looking counterpart that strengthens and validates that journey. Having reaffirmed the Constitution as our lodestar and recommitted ourselves to the moral discipline it demands, we have inevitably found that the challenges confronting our judiciary are mirrored across regions and continents undergoing their own ruptures, recalibrations, and democratic reckonings. It is here that judicial diplomacy assumes decisive relevance. No longer as a polite extension of protocol, but as a necessary instrument for institutional learning and survival. Our long-standing engagements with the United Kingdom, the European Union, UNDP, GIZ, and UNICEF have provided continuity and developmental support. Yet, it is through our newer dialogues with Sweden, Norway, Brazil, Egypt, Palestine, Nepal, and Thailand, and the enduring jurisprudential lessons of South Africa on transitional justice that we have encountered the most vivid illustrations of how judiciaries navigate upheaval, rebuild public trust, and revamp constitutionalism after fracture. These encounters with both traditional and non-traditional partners of the judiciary have enriched our understanding of reform sequencing, the burdens of adjudicating during political transition, and the quiet courage required to uphold constitutional principles when the ground beneath institutions shifts. In this sense, judicial diplomacy is not merely aligned with the theme of this year's Bay of Bengal conversation, it is emblematic of it, offering courts a lifeline of comparative wisdom as we steer our own path through uncertainty, renewal, and the arduous task of re-anchoring a nation to the constitutional rule of law. Dear guests, as Bangladesh prepares for a reimagined political future, perhaps even a reauthored constitutional compact, the judiciary must remain anchored in principle, yet alert to the world's shifting realities. The forces shaping the global and regional order, shifting alliances, crisis multiplication, the weaponization of knowledge, economic fragmentation, and climate insecurity form the strategic ecosystem within which our constitutional commitments must endure. Our task is therefore delicate. To safeguard the integrity of the Constitution as it presently stands, even as we prepare intellectually and institutionally for what the sovereign people may one day choose to create or recreate. If we falter, no architecture of reform, however celebrated, will withstand the corrosive effects of weak governance or geopolitical instability. But if we remain faithful to constitutional morality and the discipline of the rule of law, then this transitional moment will not be remembered as an interlude of uncertainty, but as the beginning of our constitutional renaissance. In an age defined by volatility, it may well be that the judiciary's steadiness, its restraint, its integrity, its courage shall become the nation's most enduring source of stability. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Your Lordship. To conclude the inaugural session, I would now like to invite the Executive Director of the Center for Governance Studies, Mr. Parvez Karim Abbasi. His stewardship and strategic vision guide much of the work that shapes CGS and the Bay of Bengal conversation. Mr. Abbasi will now deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Advisor to Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Chief Justice,